toxically negative, skill issue, hypercritical. These were just a few of the phrases used by viewers commenting on my recent videos analysing the levels Recon by Fire and Alone from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2's campaign. I actually like to think of myself as a pretty chilled dude in general. I like watching the sunrise, long walks on the beach, cuddling puppies, and such and such. This video is one I'd planned to make regardless, but I wanted to begin by highlighting some of the criticisms of my criticism. Try saying that over and over again quickly, as some seem to mistakenly think that because there are 2 missions in the game that I only like some of, I must hate, nay detest, the entirety of Modern Warfare 2's campaign. That couldn't be further from the truth. I've been a lapsed Call of Duty fan for quite some time. The yearly release schedule and lack of innovation eventually wore me down, but after recently replaying Modern Warfare and having a whale of a time, it's fair to say I was like a kid at Christmas waiting for its sequel. And during the days following Modern Warfare 2's November release, I blasted my way through it, and I had a pretty good time too. It also did leave me with a lot more to think about than I expected. Much of that was around the design of individual missions, like the 2 mentioned earlier, and you can watch my videos on both by clicking the cards on screen now. The rest of my thoughts revolved around how different missions and the game as a whole are paced, as it's all absolutely bonkers. In my mind, there are a bunch of levels which I would describe as sitting in the Modern Warfare 2 design and pacing sweet spot, and those are the ones I want to spend more time talking about, to try and explain why they're so good, and why I also think more of them were needed. I'll get to those in just a tick, as we first need to understand what sits between them at either end of the spectrum. At one extreme, you have the missions which are over in a flash, many of which feel like they should have been smaller sections in bigger levels built out around them. Wetwork and Tradecraft from early on in Modern Warfare 2's campaign are really good examples of this. They both had so much potential. Wetwork's underwater shenanigans are admittedly glorious, and I was really impressed with it all. My first time through, when I reached dry land and the opening section had concluded, I was warmed up and ready to go. I was expecting perhaps some stealth sections in the surrounding area, or a few shootouts followed by a set-piece finale. Instead, it ends just as it seems like it's getting going. Tradecraft is even guiltier of this crime. The graphical quality of the Amsterdam setting is remarkable. I've been to Amsterdam many times myself, and developer Infinity Ward nailed it, and I incorrectly assumed that because so much effort had been put into its aesthetic, there would be a nice meaty mission set on the city's streets to accompany the amazing visuals. But there isn't. It again ends quite abruptly. You walk around for a bit, shoot a few bad guys, and jobs are good 'un. Like Wetwork, Tradecraft had massive potential and should have continued on for much longer. Maybe you had to protect Price as enemies chased you through the streets, or had to clear a path ahead so he could escape unharmed. Both levels are interesting, there's no denying that, but they also could have been so much more, and the same can be said for the other blink and you'll miss them levels featured in the campaign. At the other end of the spectrum sits the missions which feel like they go on for far too long, and really needed an editor to come in and give them a good old snip. When it comes to violence and timing, I don't dislike its vehicle-based concept, but I'm not convinced it needed to go on anywhere near as long as it did. You can tell a developer is beginning to run out of ideas when the level's final challenge is a thinly veiled boss fight against an APC which has a wind-up attack you have to dodge, while you also try to avoid trios of mines it continually fires out of its arse for some bizarre reason. Recon by Fire is another good example, an initially promising take on Call of Duty 4's masterpiece all gillied up. During its later stages, it falls foul to repetition, as you spend way more time than is needed running across the hills similar to some kind of Special Forces Julie Andrews, doing the same things over and over. And the less said about the back-to-back AC-130 missions, the better. 1 is fine, but 2 in quick succession, that definitely wasn't necessary. If the shorter examples highlighted earlier simply don't give you enough to get your teeth into, then these overly long experiences are akin to being forced to eat too big a meal. You might enjoy the first few mouthfuls, but by the end you'll feel fatigued and be ready for the experience to conclude, wishing you'd just been given a regular amount of supper. Then we come to the Modern Warfare 2 Goldilocks Zone, the sweet spot which houses the levels that aren't too long, that aren't too short, but are just right. They have gameplay variety, they allow a narrative to properly develop over the course of their runtime, and when playing them, I never once found myself thinking about their length like I did with those I've touched on so far. It's during these missions that the game really came alive for me, and I think an entire campaign filled mostly with them would potentially be nigh on perfect. One of the things I found particularly interesting is that these missions tend to be made up of the same 3 building blocks. The order they're used in doesn't always line up, but no matter the combination, they come together to create what I think is the quintessential Modern Warfare experience. The 3 blocks are smaller, more tactical firefights, large-scale combat, and in-mission gimmicks. I don't think the first 2 need any further explanation, but to clarify, when I say in-mission gimmicks, I mean those sections where combat includes added complexity due to unusual circumstances, or when you're tasked with doing something a bit different altogether. To give you an example, my favourite level is probably Cartel Protection, and you can see all 3 being used to great effect during it. First you engage in some small-scale encounters, then you're attacked by Mexican troops and are forced to flee, the larger bit of combat, and finally you make your way down a mountainside and escape by shooting your way across a river, the in-mission gimmick. Another good example is Prison Break, again an excellent level. Early on you take the softly approach while infiltrating the prison, then the in-mission gimmick kicks in, this time guiding Ghost across an area using cameras, a throwback to Modern Warfare, before events conclude with a fast-paced explosive rescue mission. The difference between the 2 is that they swap the order the large-scale battle and gimmick appear in, but they nevertheless adhere to this Call of Duty rule of 3. This can also be said of Kill or Capture, Dark Water, and several others included in the game. I don't think the order the 3 are used in matters too much either, as each type of encounter is so different from the next that as long as they're all utilised, you tend to get a pretty strong mission. There are still 1 or 2 dodgy parts featured. I'd rather fight a tank myself than play through the battle with Graves at the end of Ghost Team again, but in general, the levels which stick to the template I've just outlined shine brightest. They tend to best blend together the more bombastic side of Modern Warfare 2 with quieter moments and unique scenarios, and are usually paced to perfection. And when Modern Warfare 3 arrives, I think they should be the foundation upon which the majority of its missions should be built. In addition to using this rule of 3 to structure individual levels, what I'd also like to see from the next game in the series is more attention paid to the pacing of its campaign. If you look at, say, the first act of Call of Duty 4, or indeed the rest of the game, it stands in stark contrast to how Modern Warfare 2 is paced. Most of its missions are weighty experiences, which give you a whole lot to do. Death from Above is the outlier in that it absolutely is a gimmick mission, and a very good one at that, but apart from it, the only other shorter part of the act is Aftermath, which is used to round out the act. Modern Warfare 2, by comparison, is a bit of a mess in this regard. From its outset, you lurch violently between Strike, a shorter level, Kill or Capture, a longer mission, followed by Wet Work and Tradecraft, 2 of the shortest in the campaign. Then you go through Borderline and Cartel Protection, both of which are brilliant, before you get a double dose of AC-130 action across close air and hardpoint, sniping, truck driving, and a weird Hitman-esque sort of mission. Compared to Call of Duty 4, there's little consistency, and I personally found the constant shifts between different styles and lengths of level to be incredibly jarring. Where Modern Warfare 2 really comes into its own is from Dark Water onwards, as the campaign reaches its final third. Whether it's storming an oil rig to stop a missile launch, sneaking through Las Almas and taking down enemies using whatever you can scavenge, breaking into a prison, fighting your way to Graves, or blasting through a skyscraper, every mission goes on for a good amount of time and gives you plenty to do, which allows you to really settle into the campaign and enjoy yourself. There is one much shorter level sandwiched in between them, Hindsight, but like Death from Above in Call of Duty 4, I've nothing against just the one being used to break things up a little. Essentially, what Modern Warfare 3 needs to do is marry the 3-block structure of Modern Warfare 2's stronger missions with overall campaign pacing which puts the emphasis on them. Shorter experiences and those focused more on gimmicks for their entirety should still be used, but they should be the exception used to break up the more substantial stretches of the game rather than them just being included willy-nilly all over the place. Modern Warfare 2's campaign is very entertaining, and considering its 5 to 6 hour runtime, none of the issues I've highlighted are real deal breakers, as the game doesn't go on long enough for them to mar the experience too much, but they are still issues, and I think if Infinity Ward can rectify them in time for the next release, the Modern Warfare series will only go from strength to strength. Thanks for watching the video, boys, girls and viewers who like long walks on the beach. If you had a thoroughly relaxing time, do consider liking, subscribing and letting me know your thoughts, and fingers crossed, we'll catch up again soon.